Tonight, the stabbing attacks on James Smith Cree Nation prompt Indigenous leaders to call for addictions support. And a long-term care facility is ravaged by a COVID-19 outbreak as rates continue to rise in major cities across the province. Plus, the People's Party of Canada leader is one of dozens in court in Saskatoon, fighting charges of breaking public health orders.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It's Monday, September 12th. CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Hello, and thank you for joining us. Sam is away this evening. A major COVID-19 outbreak has hit a long-term care home in Regina. The Saskatchewan Union of Nurses says 46 residents have tested positive. That means every single resident at Extendicare Elmview has contracted the virus. The Nurses Union says more than 15 staff members are also out sick with COVID-19. Sun President Tracy Zambori says she's concerned lessons were not learned from a major outbreak at Extendicare's Parkside Care Facility a year and a half ago. In all, 39 Parkside residents died from COVID-19 in late 2020 and early 2021. Zambori says the main takeaways from that outbreak were the need for better ventilation, proper use of PPE, and better compliance with health and safety protocols. The province is in the process of taking over Extendicare facilities.
Where is the SHA in assisting Extendicare? We realize that they're not taking over officially until October 9th, but they've still been attached to that facility. So we think it's incredibly important that, the three main things seem to have maybe slipped a little for there to be the entire place is now been deemed in a massive outbreak when every single resident is positive. This is a pretty significant situation, and we need to remember again that COVID has not left us.
Zambori says Elmview staff have told her that they're stressed and are unsure how to cope with the outbreak. She says the healthcare system can't handle another influx of COVID-19 patients. COVID-19 levels continue to rise in Saskatoon, Regina, Prince Albert, and North Battleford. That's according to the latest numbers from wastewater research teams. Rates have been creeping up in all four cities for more than a month. In fact, Saskatoon is now approaching the levels it saw during a COVID-19 wave this spring. And dozens of people charged with breaking COVID-19 rules in Saskatoon last year are getting their day in court. They include People's Party of Canada leader Maxime Bernier and activist Mark Friesen. Both men were in court today for the start of the trial. CBC's Dan Zakreski brings us the story.
Maxime Bernier came to Saskatoon to finish the fight he picked last year. He's one of dozens of people charged with breaking public health orders last year. So many accused, the trial is being held at a downtown convention center instead of the courthouse.
They were saying that, we didn't have the right to be out there more than 10 persons. And we did a rally, a political protest, and we were more than 10 persons. So, I'm very, it's very upsetting that the Saskatchewan government is using all these resources to, for them, according to them, we don't have the right in Canada to freely, peacefully assembly.
Bernier was at this rally in Kinsman Park last May. So was activist Mark Friesen. Saskatoon police photographed and then ticketed dozens of people who came to the park. One of those officers testified Monday. Maxime Bernier isn't denying that he was at the rally. Rather, the issue is whether the charter right to assembly trumps a public health order. Now, the trial is set to run 2 weeks, but much of it is going to take place in a voir dire, or trial within a trial. The judge will ultimately decide what evidence and testimony should be admitted. Dan Zakreski, CBC News, Saskatoon.
The lawyers for a Saskatoon man in a high-profile murder case say they can no longer represent him. Greg Furtuck is accused of killing his estranged wife, Sherry, in 2015. He was arrested 4 years later after telling undercover police that he killed her and got rid of her body. He has pleaded not guilty. Furtuck's trial began last year, but now there is yet another delay. His lawyers have learned that he filed complaints about them with the Law Society. He questioned their competence and professional integrity. The lawyers say their relationship with Furtuck has been permanently damaged and they can no longer represent him. Their application to withdraw will be heard next month. It's been over a week since the horrific mass stabbing at James Smith Cree Nation and the nearby village of Weldon. Now, Indigenous leaders are calling for drug treatment centers to help tackle a crystal meth crisis. Yasmin Khanea reports.
James Smith Cree Nation is a community in mourning, grappling with immense loss after the stabbing tragedy. The attacks have also prompted Indigenous leaders to call for addiction support. Chief Rob Head says crystal meth use is rampant.
I can't believe how fast it creeped into our First Nations, and it took control of all of our young people that have tried it. It's very addictive.
First Nations leaders say their communities are plagued by substance use because of colonization, the residential school system, and intergenerational trauma, and that long-term treatment and therapy are required.
We got to protect our community, fight against drugs and alcohol.
Chief Head told CBC News some of his own family members are addicted to crystal meth.
It's something that requires between 30 days to 90 days of treatment just to be able to get yourself back to a normal way of thinking. Other than that, you're pretty much addicted if you don't go into treatment.
There is a 42-day treatment program on the James Smith Cree Nation Reserve, but Head and others say it's not enough. They want more beds and treatment and supports that extend beyond 6 weeks, especially to deal with crystal meth.
We need like 30 days, 60 days, 90 days of detox just to get people back to normal. And then they have to go into therapy and treatment. And those kind of things are not here in First Nations country.
The federal government says it's committed to helping James Smith Cree Nation. And the province says it will work with Ottawa to tackle addictions challenges. Yasmin Khanea, CBC News, Saskatoon.
The new Conservative leader says Canadians are hurting and he's the one to fix that. Pierre Poilievre met with Conservative MPs and senators today, his first caucus meeting since winning the top job with a majority this weekend. As Catherine Cullen reports, while it was all smiles, there are questions about internal tensions.
He may be trying to show off a softer side, kicking off his first caucus meeting with a celebration for his son. But make no mistake, Pierre Poilievre's attack dog style is still there.
Canadians are out of money, and this Prime Minister is out of touch.
Though the Liberals are ready to attack right back.
A leader who advocated a series of policies and a series of ideas in the run-up to winning the leadership that are pretty irresponsible and pretty reckless. So,
like what?
Well, firing the governor of the Bank of Canada, telling people that you can sort of be insulated from inflation if you invest in cryptocurrency.
Poilievre is trying to stay focused on Canadians' economic woes, blaming the Prime Minister.
If you really care, commit today that there will be no new tax increases on workers and on seniors. None.
But the Conservatives also have to look inwards. The leadership race was divisive.
The average trucker has more integrity in his pinky finger than you had in your entire scandal-plagued Liberal cabinet.
But the end was decisive. With a stunning win of 68%, a clear result that might bring some on side.
We're not as divided as people would maybe have us, think.
Including this British Columbia MP and former cabinet minister.
Can you guarantee that you're sticking around?
Absolutely, I'm sticking around. I'm a Conservative, and I'm asking all Conservatives now to unite behind our new leader.
But asked if he'd start advocating for some of Poilievre's more contentious positions, ones he previously opposed, Ed Fast said no, meaning unity could still prove complicated. Catherine Cullen, CBC News, Ottawa.
As you heard, Pierre Poilievre's victory was decisive. Here in Saskatchewan, he won all 14 ridings handedly, taking 78% of all votes overall. Poilievre had a few stops in the province during the campaign. He announced plans to scrap the carbon tax and held a freedom rally inside Mosaic Stadium. Poilievre received public endorsements from 22 Saskatchewan Party MLAs and 7 Saskatchewan Conservative MPs. It was a gorgeous day to be out on the water, or at least near it. People soaked up the late summer weather in Regina's Wascana Centre today. Good idea to bask in those warm rays while you can. We'll have details on whether this good fortune is set to continue after the break. Last month, we told you about a new orchard in Regina's Wascana Centre. It has fruit you wouldn't normally associate with the prairies, like apples, pears, and plums. But as Ethan Williams explains, we're actually seeing more of this uncommon fruit here in Saskatchewan, and climate change could be playing a role.
I have a veggie garden with the fruit pretty much in the middle of it.
Elaine McKegg's garden near Hudson Bay is ready for harvest, but it's not just tomatoes and carrots growing here. There are strawberries, plums, and even cantaloupe, 12 of them to be exact.
We have an oak tree in our front yard. I figured if an oak tree will grow here, what else can? And why not push the limits? Let's see what can grow.
Further south near Lumsden, Dean Kreitzer has been growing fruit on a larger scale for 23 years. He owns Over the Hill Orchards and Winery, and his crop includes everything from wine grapes to apples to figs.
I look at this as a laboratory, and in a laboratory you test things and you fail and you succeed. So that's kind of how I get through all the failures, and it's just learning how certain plants react to the Saskatchewan climate.
Fruit farming actually has a long history in Saskatchewan. Apples were first bred here in the 1920s, sour dwarf cherries in the 40s, and even a variety of plums were first bred by a farmer in eastern Saskatchewan in the 70s. And the industry has grown quickly, with just 8 hectares of commercial fruit development in 1980 to 900 hectares and 250 growers today. And our warming planet could further increase production. Bob Boers studies fruit at the University of Saskatchewan. He says while warmer weather could bring more diverse crops and a longer growing season, it's hard on plants that are built to withstand the cold.
The other issue is whether we get new diseases and pests, right? Because our winters kill a lot of the insects that want to live here or get them off to a slow start.
Climate change may already be having an impact. As the planet has warmed over the years, plant hardiness zones have shifted. The higher the zone number, the warmer the temperatures are. And the biggest changes have been in Western Canada.
In Regina, 50 years ago, the hardiness zone rating was a 2A, whereas when we updated our maps about 10 years ago, that rating had changed to a 3B.
An updated map is expected within the next year.
Next, we have our row of rhubarb.
Elaine McKegg plans to keep pushing the botany boundaries in her garden. She's going to try to grow honeydew next year. Ethan Williams, CBC News, Regina.
And if you want to protect fruit trees and other flora in your own backyard, now is the time to act. The City of Regina is asking residents to ban trees on their property. Banning elms, Manitoba maples, and fruit trees now helps reduce cankerworms come springtime by preventing them from laying their eggs up high. It also means the city has to spray fewer trees.
This weather update is brought to you by Capital GMC Buick Cadillac, making back to busy easy.
Weather specialist Ethan Williams has made it back from the orchards. Well, I'm all for more local produce, although it's important we keep an eye on why it can be grown here, as you mentioned. So what does the forecast look like for fruit this week?
Well, we're in for a little bit of cooler temperatures, Natasha, but we've had some nice warm days today. And if you are thinking of doing some planting, just a quick refresher of what we saw in that report there. Again, generally Saskatchewan in hardiness zones 3A through 4A, and there's a lot of things that will withstand quite a bit of cold. Apples, pears, plums, hardy to minus 34 Celsius, peaches down to minus 31, and we didn't touch on apricots, mulberries and aronia berries in that last report, but they are also hardy to minus 31 as well. Prince Albert northward, a little harder to get things planted just because the zones are a little bit less hardy in our lower zones in that area. Now, if you got vegetables, plants of the non-hardy variety, you're going to want to bring them in this evening or cover them up. We do have a frost advisory for the Hudson Bay Porcupine Plain area, as well as Melfort, Tisdale, and Nipawin. Temperatures close to the freezing mark or at the freezing mark tonight, and likely some patchy frost in there. But we have not had to worry about frost over the weekend. In fact, we had to worry about record temperatures yesterday, getting to 33.5, the hottest record in Saskatoon. Outlook Kindersley leader, breaking records that were set back in the mid to late 1960s. Pardon me. And down in Rosetown, also a pretty old record there at 33.4 degrees yesterday. And temperatures have cooled off, but we are still sitting quite warm, much cooler in the far north of the province. High pressure keeping those nice warm temperatures in place in the low to mid 20s in southern Saskatchewan. Central Saskatchewan, we're closer to 20 degrees, now getting below the 20-degree mark in places like Hudson Bay and Prince Albert. Bit of a hazy day too. Forest fire smoke going to continue to work its way eastward. Overnight tomorrow morning, it should be in the southwest part of the province. The thickest of it will migrate eastward toward Regina mid-afternoon, and then it moves up northeast of us toward the Hudson Bay and Wynyard area as we get into Wednesday morning. And that means that our air quality likely going to drop. First number is the air quality health index tonight. Second number is the index tomorrow. And especially in the southwest corner, we will look for that to pick up. So do be careful if you have any respiratory illnesses, especially. Now, high pressure is what's going to make this frost move in tonight as that air sinks downward toward the earth. And we're also going to be seeing some spotty showers moving in tomorrow through portions of southern and central Saskatchewan. A much cloudier day for us. But our next best chance of showers, of any moisture, moves in on Wednesday as we continue to see a system move in there, probably about 5 millimeters or so. Windy conditions in the southwest tomorrow. Those migrate to the far southeast of the province on Wednesday as that system moves in. Regina, rather, let's take a look at your next few days here. Cloudy conditions again, 5 millimeters possible on Wednesday, but then we will get some clearing as we head through the weekend. Saskatoon, a couple of cloudy days here, breezy on Wednesday, and then the temperatures return to normal. So not bad actually, Natasha, for this time of year. September, we should be right around the 20-degree mark.
Thanks for that, Ethan.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, we'll be back with more news after the break. The 10 days of mourning for Queen Elizabeth continues. Here in Regina, you may have heard a special tribute yesterday. It happened at Knox Metropolitan United Church, where the bells began to ring at noon and continued for 9.5 hours. The Regina bell ringers have a tradition of sounding the bells once for every day a late monarch wore the crown. For the Queen, that works out to 25,301 tolls. Queen Elizabeth's casket was in Scotland today and will be flown to London tomorrow. But even as thousands of her Scottish subjects showed up to pay their final respects, support for the monarchy itself is in question. Chris Brown reports.
This was Scotland's day to showcase its appreciation and affection for the Queen. Members of the Royal Regiment of Scotland placed her casket in the hearse for a procession along Edinburgh's Royal Mile.
God bless the Queen! All of this celebration of her happened because she died in Scotland, and I think that would have made her very happy.
Together publicly for the first time since her death, the Queen's 4 children followed behind. Prince Edward on the right, Prince Andrew, Princess Anne, and King Charles. At St. Giles's Cathedral, pallbearers moved the casket inside. crown of Scotland, crafted almost 500 years ago, was placed atop.
To our late monarch, whose love for Scotland was legendary.
The minister celebrated a life of service and dedication.
Scotland is a place that Charles, as Prince of Wales, came often. To come here now as king is significant for many in this crowd.
Polls suggest that while most Scots support the monarchy, enthusiasm is lower than in England. So one of King Charles's key tasks will be to keep a high profile, says this expert.
Everybody in Scotland is a kind of nationalist with a small n, and they'd easily be provoked by any signs of disrespect for Scotland or not taking Scotland seriously, even Unionists. So the monarchy has to be sure they don't put a foot wrong here.
Outside, the sense was the new king's reign is beginning well.
I think it's a unifying event. I think it's very important that we are a union, and it has been proved that today, the turnout.
King Charles also visited Scottish Parliament, where independence parties dominate. The UK government has rejected calls for another referendum on the topic. The King will have to navigate that challenge too.
I take up my new duties with thankfulness for all that Scotland has given me.
Later, the four royals returned to St. Giles for a vigil to publicly honour their mother and join with Scots in saying farewell. Chris Brown, CBC News, Edinburgh.
Ethan Williams is back for another look at our forecast.
And we will see some increasing cloudiness as we head into tomorrow morning. Natasha, 11 degrees at 8 a.m. in Regina. Southeast winds picking up, and they will continue to pick up as we go into the afternoon. We'll see cloudy conditions with some showers at noon. Now in Saskatoon, also cloudy, 12 degrees at 8 a.m. And as we head into that noon hour, we are looking for some clearing conditions. Again, winds picking up to around 35 kilometers an hour, but some sun and cloud. Want to introduce you to a new friend we've made here. Dave Phillips out in Lumsden sending us this Acmon Sphinx caterpillar, and they're found this time of year in North America, including southern Canada. They're different than those traditional tent caterpillars that we see here. They do become moths, and Natasha, they like to eat grape plants, so a heads up to the vineyards in the province.
Thanks for that, Ethan.
You're welcome.
Well, before we leave you, we want to share a long-awaited and emotional reunion in Saskatoon. About 50 Afghan refugees arrived at the Saskatoon airport over the weekend. They fled Kabul a year ago after the Taliban seized control. They're part of a much larger group of about 450 Afghan refugees connected to the progressive Marifat High School. And while 250 made it to Saskatoon last October as government-sponsored refugees, the rest have been stuck in Pakistan until now.
You know, when I left my home, even I left my family there, and I just come alone with my sister, and that was something hard for us to live without our families. And I just remember the things that my brothers, my mom, my dad, they cried so much, and it was one of our wishes that we should arrive in a safe place. And right now, we just feel safe that at least we all arrive here somewhere that's safe. And we are happy for this.
Many of the young women who arrived are highly educated and hope to continue their schooling in Saskatchewan, something that wouldn't be possible under Taliban control. That's it for us. Have a great night.